It's a film about the paths people take to get out of Africa, really. The context we use is football, and one of the issues we end up highlighting is that of the trafficking of African youths in the name of football and into Europe. It does go beyond Africa. I mean, you'd imagine that it's also takes place in South America and beyond as well. We follow two characters in particular, one Kermit Erasmus from South Africa and another Ndomo Sabo from Cameroon. And they take two very different paths themselves. And with Kermit, we're able to follow kind of real time everything that happens to him in the course of his attempts to break into European football. With Ndomo, we catch up with him after a lot of what he's gone through has already happened. He is someone who is trafficked to Europe at the age of 15 from Cameroon, his family having leveraged themselves to enable his passage to Europe. And he ends up abandoned on the streets of Paris. Now, we don't capture that in the film. We actually catch up with Ndomo 2 years later back in Cameroon, where he's eventually made his way back, having lived rough for a year on the streets of Paris. Don't want to go into too much detail of the story of the film, let people see the film for itself, but so a lot of it is covered in retrospect, but we do capture some very interesting developments in his career path as he moves on in the world. Kermit, the South African boy, was established mainly, I guess, by my producer friend Simon Laub. He, I think, did all the research and found a suitable character who looked to be coming into the world stage in a big way. You have to bear in mind that we were filming in the build-up to the World Cup in South Africa, the Football World Cup in South Africa in 2010. And Kermit was a young player aged 19, looking to break into that squad, and was being cited in a number of journals as being a big star to watch from Africa. So that's kind of how we came across Kermit, and then you find his agent and you find his club and you speak to them, etc. Ndomo, well, we worked with an NGO called Culture Food Solidaire, who are based in Paris, and their president is a man called Jean-Claude Mvoumen, who founded the NGO, and they deal with specifically the trafficking of African youths into Europe. And so we worked quite closely with them throughout the making of the film, and they provided a number of examples of these youths who'd been trafficked to Europe, centered mostly around Paris, which is where they're based, and there being a big, strong West African contingent in Paris. We came across many examples of these kids. Ndomo's story ended up being the most compelling of the lot due to the hardships he had endured, due to the fact that he was the victim of some corruption in Cameroon, as well as threats and other things. So we ended up following his story as the most interesting one that we came across. But I must say we came across a lot of examples of young kids on the streets of Paris, aged 14, 15, even 13, and that was a bit disheartening, it must be said. For me, it was being personally in Cameroon, dealing with some really, heartbreaking stories, because Ndomo wasn't the only one we spoke to. We spoke to other examples. A 13-year-old kid who was on his way to Brazil for some reason, to some football academy. As one character in the film says, he's not going there to play football, maybe to donate his organs, but anyway, that's not true. I've spoken to the kid since, he's fine. But I think being in Cameroon and hearing these stories and the exploitation that had taken place, and the hopes and dreams being crushed, and there were times when we cried together, me and a couple of the characters, in the retelling of their stories and the remembering of the issues they've been through. These kids go far. They don't just go to Europe. They in search of their dream, they go to the Ukraine, they go to China, they go to Thailand, they go anywhere in the world in the desperate hope to make it in some form or another, to escape poverty. That's what the reality is all about. And in Africa, and I don't mean to stereotype the entirety of a continent with 60-odd nation states, but there's a lot of poverty in Africa, and that drives this desperation and this willingness to try any route and to take any risk to get out of Africa and into somewhere perceived as better.